LBC host Sangita Myska has vanished from the station's airwaves, and no one knows exactly why. She last appeared on the station on the 14th of April. That was the day after Iran mounted its missile attack on Israel, which was in response to Israel having bombed its consulate in Syria. And on that day, Myska conducted this interview with Israeli government spokesperson Avi Hyman.
What Israel did by taking that action against Iran was escalate what is already an incredibly fragile situation.
Sangita, that's an outrageous framing of the reality.
It's not an outrageous framing. I've just been speaking to somebody who is a diplomat to Iran from the UK government. That's not an outrageous framing of it. What Israel did was strike what is considered in diplomatic circles the sovereign territory of Iran, whether we like it or not. No. And there was undoubtedly going to be a blowback. So did Israel game out what was going to happen next?
Firstly, I'm not going to speak directly to that strike. What I can say definitively, and this is why it's outrageous, I can say definitively is that wasn't an embassy, it wasn't a consulate, it wasn't any type of diplomatic mission.
It's been widely reported as that.
Because that's what Iran says. Because that's what Iran says. So would you like to copy and paste?
Are you suggesting every single news organization in the world has got that wrong?
No, I'm suggesting that the Iranians have an interest to say that was a diplomatic mission when we know definitively it wasn't. Okay, because they then want to give you the response that you've just copied and pasted, with all due respect.
Sangita Myska's framing of the situation was not outrageous, as the spokesperson said, but Myska hasn't been on LBC since. The Metro newspaper has approached both LBC and Myska for comment, though neither has said why the host is off air. Listeners, though, are drawing their own conclusions. A change.org petition to reinstate Myska was launched last week, and it's already gained over 18,000 signatures. Politicians have been demanding answers too. This was from Labour's John McDonnell. Sangita Myska serves as a beacon of fair and balanced professional journalism. This decision smacks of censorship. And he says reinstate Sangita Myska to her position at LBC. Dawn Butler also commented, genuine question, LBC, where is Sangita Myska? And you see that hashtag actually had quite a lot of tweets on it. And Lindsay Hilsum, who is a very respected journalist from Channel 4 News, said, worried about the unexplained disappearance from LBC of Sangita Myska. She's a brave, principled journalist and an excellent broadcaster. Listeners will be missing her. What's the explanation? Others have been crowdsourcing clues. Social housing campaigner Kwejo Twenboa posted this. I've received a message from someone who I'll keep anonymous. They say Sangita disappeared from the LBC schedule. Producers were told no one will notice she's gone. But if people are to ring in to say she's fine, if this is true, it's vile. It'll now be down to LBC to confirm or clarify. Now, there have been at least a few signs of life from Sangita Myska. Last week, she had this exchange with a fan. So someone says, hope you're okay, Sangita, you missed. And then Sangita says, I miss you all too. Myska hasn't posted on Twitter since, but 4 days ago, she posted this to her Instagram account. Now, if you don't know, and I certainly didn't, that's a section of Verdi's Requiem called The Day of Wrath. And alongside it, Myska wrote, quote, it's a beautiful reminder, whoever we are, whatever station in life, in the end, all should be judged on their honesty, authenticity, and actions. Ash, what do you think is going on here?
Whatever station we're at in life, eh?
I didn't even clock that. That's good.
I think there's a little bit of coded messaging going on there. Also on Sangita Myska's Instagram was a photo of a flower bed, and that was captioned gardening, ... leading some to speculate whether or not she'd been placed on gardening leave. I mean, the thing that I would like to point out is that the Israeli government spokesperson who she was interviewing, Avi Hyman, is, even by the standards of Israeli politics, really quite extreme. So in 2005, he was interviewed and he said, when handed the Temple Mount by miraculous means, we froze and watched as our apologist leadership handed over the keys to the Muslim enemy. So, of course, he's talking there about the Israeli government who negotiated the Oslo Accords. Later, in a interview that was conducted with someone who was doing their PhD, he was asked if all the land of Israel was sacred. He said, when asked where the border should be, it clearly says in the Torah that Israel should go from the Euphrates to the Nile, and then it has to be. So this is someone who believes in a picture of Israeli expansionism that goes far beyond the occupied Palestinian territories, right? The Euphrates to the Nile is an awful lot of land. And this is someone who, was being interviewed by Sangita Myska, a Israeli government spokesperson. This man is an extremist, quite frankly. Those are very extreme positions to hold. She put to him completely legitimate questions where she said, well, look, the bombing in Damascus, it's an embassy compound. In diplomatic circles, that is considered the sovereign territory of another state. And if that was considered biased, well, then talking about international law, that's biased. There's then no definition of bias which, can hold the sort of collectively agreed framework of international law as meaning anything anymore. Because, if Israel says that's bias, then so it is. I mean, it's just a way of completely chucking out of the window any kind of basis for journalistic interrogation. And is really quite worrying if that is indeed the reason why she's been taken off the air. Of course, we can only speculate in the silence of LBC and Sangita Myska, but the timing does sound quite suspicious, doesn't it?
When it comes to this, sometimes someone's like tweeted something, unwise, and obviously they shouldn't lose their job, but you can sort of see how there's sort of this weakness that someone inside the organization could exploit if they wanted to get rid of them anyway. But being, as we say, we can't confirm what's happened here, but being put on gardening leave perhaps for having asked a diplomat a sort of difficult question, that's completely bizarre. But we have seen it before. So Mehdi Hassan, he seems to have been sort of let go from MSNBC for a tough interview of Mark Regev. Now, again, he didn't say anything untrue. He just gave Mark Regev a tough interview. And then within a couple of weeks, he was out. He was off air. So we are in a very, very strange situation. If not only are you not allowed to say sort of stuff about Israel which might offend certain people. Now, that's sort of the debate which we're used to. Oh, you think Zionism is bad, therefore you're an anti-Semite. That's the kind of discussion that we're used to people having. Or people doing, I think unwise things like comparing Israel's actions to the Nazis, things which, I think are best avoided. But we're very used to that sort of discourse. But this idea that asking a politician tough questions means that you risk your job. I mean, Ash, that is really quite chilling, isn't it?
This is exactly it. What we're seeing here are the various ways in which the doctrine of Israeli exceptionalism plays out through our politics and our media in this country. Now, there are reasons for that about what's perceived to be in Britain and America's geopolitical interests. This idea of Israel being a outpost of Western interests in the Middle East. That's something which is shaped our foreign policy in relation to Israel for very many decades. But it's also something which has been absorbed and ruthlessly implemented through media organizations as well. It's this idea that the standards don't apply to Israel. And when you do sort of uphold them in relation to Israel's military activities, its domestic politics, that is, unforgivably partial, right? It's totally biased. It's an illegitimate line of questioning. And I think that now there are wider sources of information for people, right? People get a lot of information on social media. People are able to access news sources like Al Jazeera. That doctrine of Israeli exceptionalism is coming under significant scrutiny from audiences which are politically engaged with what they're getting from the media. People consume a lot of media without trusting it very much. And I think that it puts media organizations that hope that they could get away with this kind of wildly unethical policing of its editorial lines according to what's in Israel's best interest. It's harder for them to get away with that now than it used to be.
Even if you think a question is misjudged, like who was it that asked, I think it was Angela Rayner, she was asked, would you nationalize sausages? Now, I think that's a stupid question, but that person got promoted, and I don't, obviously they shouldn't have lost their job for asking that question. And by the way, Sangita Myska's questions were very good, as were Mehdi Hassan's. This was, by the way, the legal dispute it was an annex to a embassy, right? And the embassy, 100% Iranian sovereignty. The annex, seems to me there's some legal dispute. Lots of people say it is their territory. Some people clearly claim it's not. But either way, it's right next to the embassy. You can look up a picture of it. There's this building that's been bombed, that's collapsed, and right next to it is the official Iranian embassy. Now, it's a consular building, so under most people's understanding, that makes it the sovereign territory of Iran. But either way, this is the idea that you shouldn't ask about the provocative nature of bombing an embassy or a consulate building. I mean, just seems completely bizarre to me.